Philadelphia is steep in broadcast history. From the early pioneering days of broadcasting in the 1920s to today, Philadelphia has always been at the forefront. The Delaware Valley has been home to some of the best local programming in the country, starting with the early soap operas and children's shows to pioneering the best news formats in the country. Much of it all began right here. From radio announcers to television personalities, cameramen to directors, these were the broadcasters that burned out the airwaves. These were the pioneers of Philadelphia broadcasting.
Welcome to this edition of Pioneers of Philadelphia Broadcasting. And with us today is the famous Jane Norman, otherwise known as Pixanne. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows who you are, but everybody does not know where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you got in the show business.
Wow, that's a full order there. Well, believe it or not, I'm a Philly girl, born and bred in Philadelphia. Went to Elwood Elementary in East Oak Lane, which is where I grew up. Then went to Wagner Junior High, Olney, and graduated from Temple.
Oh, great.
Temple University. So I worked everywhere, Billy, everywhere you could imagine, across the country, but I have never left my roots in Philadelphia.
All right, you graduate Temple.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go right into broadcasting, or did you do something else first?
Well, Temple was a wonderful training ground. It really was. I majored in education and minored in theater, radio, and television. In fact, I was one of the first and only women in the radio and communications and television. They call it communications now. Mm-hmm. When I went, it was radio and television.
Sure, radio was big time then.
Oh, gosh, yeah. But it was great because I learned how to DJ. I learned about music, scoring, and that was all due to Temple University, really. Mm-hmm. But I always knew that I should have something to fall back on. So I went into teaching. So right out of college, I got a wonderful job in the Cheltenham Township School District. And I taught for 4 years, taught kindergarten. And my babies, I loved my babies, I really did. It was a wonderful experience. I was able to use just about everything I had ever learned teaching these kids. And I think they had a unique experience with me because I used a great deal of music, and they loved that. In fact, I will tell you the funniest story. One day, 40 years after I taught kindergarten, had another whole career, as we'll talk about, my husband and I were at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. And who should be headlining in the main room but Billy? I taught Billy when he was 5 years old. And I had told his mom and dad that I think he really did have some musical talent, mm-hmm. and they should give him piano lessons. And they thought, no, he's probably too young. I said, no. Absolutely not. He's interested, give him lessons. I took lessons at 3 years old. Well, sure enough, he was terrific, and he recognized me from the stage.
Wow.
And he brought me up on the stage, and he said, this is my former kindergarten teacher who believed in me and knew that I had some musical talent. She's a singer. And I'm thinking, oh no, don't bring me up here. Well, he did. Brought me up on the stage. He accompanied me. He said, give me a key, give me a song. I think I did Ain't Misbehavin'. And he was wonderful accompanying me. It was such
what a thrill,
a surreal experience. My little 5-year-old was accompanying his teacher. It was really crazy.
And he remembered you.
He did.
He picked your face out of the crowd.
It was so strange. Well, I started off really long before Temple and everything else. I was a musical child prodigy. I was playing Mozart and Beethoven on the piano at age 2.5. I know it's ridiculous. My mom tells a story of she thought she had left the radio on downstairs, so she turned the vacuum cleaner off, went downstairs to turn the radio off, and found out that I was sitting at the piano playing a Mozart sonata exactly correctly. And she's thinking, this is kind of interesting. So at 3, she didn't give me lessons, but I studied with her teacher, as a matter of fact. And my mom was such a smart lady. She never pushed. She was encouraging, but never pushed. And she thought she'll do what she wants in life. If she wants to be a concert pianist, fine. If not, that's fine too. Thank God, Mom. It wasn't something I wanted to do later on in life, but it was terrific in the beginning.
So here you are teaching school, playing music, enjoying yourself. How come you got into TV?
Well, a lot of the parents were telling me that they thought that I probably should bring some of my talents to a larger audience. And I'm thinking, okay, what I really would love to do is be Peter Pan on Broadway. I mean, I was more Mary Martin than Mary Martin. I really wanted to do Broadway, but I realized, Bill, that there were thousands of people who were probably better than I was, as good as I was. The competition would be fierce, but I had a feeling that nobody could do a kids show the way I could. So, after I had taught for 4 years and became certified, I went to Channel 6, which at that time was WFIL, WPVI now. And I knew Lou Klein, who had been one of my professors at Temple. And he and I talked, and he said, you would be a terrific on-air personality, but we already have, somebody. Why don't you walk across the street to Channel 10? Bill, no resume, no appointment. I just walked across the street, and it happened that the program director was there. And he said to me, yes, and how can I help you? And oh my gosh, I was brazen back then, really brazen. I figured I had nothing to lose, and I said, no, I really think it's what I could do for you. And he looked at me as if I were crazy. Or maybe I really had talent. He had no idea. So he took me back in this cavernous big studio, which is where they did the news. I sat down at a piano. I sang. I told stories. I did exactly what I was doing with my kindergarten kids. And he said, oh my golly, you are good. Go home and think of a program idea. Okay? And that night at the dinner table, Pixanne was born.
How about that?
Came up with the idea of the Pixanne character who would fly, because I realized that all kids loved flying, and they all wished that they could fly. And then created Windy Witch, which I also played as a protagonist, and she was wasn't wicked, but she was naughty. And kids love that. And all of the other characters, which later came to fruition because of the Addis Williams puppets. They were incredible, which I didn't know at that time, but the creation was done at the dinner table.
Well, I would watch Pixanne, believe it or not, and I always wondered how you were flying around there. How did that happen?
Good question. Well, this was the early days of television. Nobody really knew about how to fly me. So the station got this gigantic parachute harness that was probably meant for a gentleman, 250 pounds.
And you were about 110.
Even less, about 105. And they put this parachute harness on me underneath my little silly costume. And then we cut a hole, and we had the wire and the cable, and on the other end was an AD, an assistant director, who flew me. The only problem was the first time we did it, he dropped me on the concrete. It wasn't his fault, the cable broke, and splat. Down I went on WCAU's floor. But everything was okay, I wasn't hurt. And then they decided to bring in a professional. And who would it, this was so exciting to me. It was Peter Foy, who flew everybody on Broadway. And he flew Mary Martin in the original black and white CBS version of Peter Pan. And what a difference that was to wear a harness that fit me, although it was painful.
What do you mean painful?
Well, she stayed in the harness for about 10 minutes at a time. And I told Peter that I did not want to see any guide wires, because if anybody had seen that show, you knew Mary Martin wasn't flying. That Peter Pan was not flying because you could see 4 guide wires. So I said to him, I only want 1 wire. I don't want the kids to see a wire. And he said, that's impossible. You'll be spinning around like crazy. I said, I don't care. I will work and work and work until I can make it happen. And sure enough, after 8.5 hours, I was able to position myself so that I could fly, and we could do the taping of me flying into the forest and flying out of the forest. But when I took off the harness, I looked as though I had been in an automobile accident, but I had welts all over my body. It was worth it, because to this day, every child in America and every adult truly believes Pixanne could fly.
Absolutely, I believed it. Now you're on that set all the time. You had people on, you had animals on. Did you ever have any strange experiences with animals?
Oh, did we ever? Did everything ever go right with animals? One time, Joe Bonaducci, who was the PR person from the Philadelphia Zoo, brought on an anteater. It's an unusual looking animal anyway.
Ugly.
It is kind of. His mother loves it though. And I asked Joe, have you ever, or has anybody ever been bitten by this anteater? And he was very upset. He said, certainly not. We take these animals all over the Philadelphia school systems, at which point the anteater took a gigantic bite out of Joe's hand, and the blood was flowing, and this was live TV.
Oh my God.
Oh, Lord. Another time, this is priceless. He brought in a full-grown tiger, and the tiger is sitting beside me very sedately. I am petting the tiger. I mean, he's not going to bring me a tiger that's going to bite. Well, I didn't think he did. And he was fine. We did an arts and crafts segment when all of a sudden the boom operator, the microphone operator, lowered the boom a little too quickly, and it spooked the tiger, scrambled up one of our paper mache trees, and stayed there. And all of a sudden, I am looking around the studio. There was no one there. The entire crew left me by myself with a tiger up the tree as they got out of the studio.
How did they get that tiger back under control?
Well, little red meat will do it every time. And he came down.
I'll tell you, that's a wild animal. I don't care what they tell you.
I'm with
that's
you.
That's a dangerous thing.
It really was.
You know, I think back, and I remember you flying around in that tight little Peter Pan suit. Did adults watch Pixanne?
Oh, yes. We had quite an adult audience, particularly the mothers that were home, not working. They stayed home with the kids. We had a large adult audience, but they weren't the only ones. We also had a group of men from Upper Darby that every morning at 9 o'clock would go into a bar, turn the TV on, have their beers or whatever they were drinking, and watch Pixanne.
They were lusting after Pixanne?
Oh, I'm afraid so.
At 9 o'clock in the morning?
9 o'clock in the morning. And I got mail galore from them every week. Oh, I really liked your hair. Wasn't crazy about the story today. It was the funniest thing. But the thing they really loved, at one point, I did a show called Space Girl, which was a Saturday morning quasi science fiction kind of a show. And the costume, I have to admit, was really kind of cute. And they liked that a lot. I only know that because they wrote to me telling me how much they liked it. The show didn't last very long, but the memory lingered on.
How long did Pixanne stay on the air in Philadelphia?
In Philly, we were on about 9.5 years.
Then what happened?
Then the show moved to New York. We went to Channel 5, and I did the show at Channel 5, which was Metro Media, and then we syndicated the show out of Metro Media for quite a few years. And then my husband and I bought all of my shows that we had. And we syndicated them across the country for quite a few more years.
Great.
And it had a 17-year run.
Wonderful.
Good long run.
What else did you do beside Pixanne?
Good question. After Pixanne went off the air, there was really very little to be done in the way of children's programming. Sesame Street was coming in at that point. I knew the kids were in good hands. So I decided to do something for adults. You know, you've got to create, you find out where a need is, and then you try to fill that need. And we created a show called Maintenance Ms., and that was 117 short form features where I taught women how to do everything around the house.
You mean like plumbing?
Plumbing, electrical, carpentry. Seriously, very simple things. But you know, if you lose your ring down the drain,
Sure.
how you get it out, the little trap thing on the bottom,
Those traps are no longer there.
they were then.
Yeah, I know. I remember them.
Pardon my crazy cough. And it was tremendously successful. It really was. It aired all over the country for a long time. But I have to admit, Bill, I felt like a fraud. I did not know how to do 117 things, but I was a good enough actress that I could pull it off, and traveled around the country kicking off the show everywhere. It was quite an interesting experience, but I missed the kids. I did miss the kids after a couple of years. So, fortunate thing, I get a call from Jack Adams, who was my illusionist on the show for 17 years, and he said, I have an idea for a magic show. Would you pitch it for me to the NBC television network? I said, sure, I'd love to do that for you. He was a wonderful talent. Well, I gave the pitch, and at that time, Sonny Fox was head of, what do we call it, family programming for NBC. And he said, Jane, I love the pitch. Don't care about doing a magic show. Do you have anything else? And we had created a show in our minds called the National Kids Quiz, where we would take problems that families had. We were doing subject matter of sex, drugs, drinking, homosexuality, all different kinds of things that were not talked about very much. And I explained that to him, and he said, I love it. And I walked out of there with my first network contract.
Wow.
And he said, you have a choice of 2 stars. Michael Landon, who was very popular, Little House on the Prairie, and Henry Winkler for Happy Days.
Not bad.
Not bad, not chopped liver. And I loved Michael Landon. He was our star, and it was fabulous. And after we did the show, I knew there was a book there. I mean, everything leads to something else. And sure enough, there was. And the book was called The Private Life of the American Teenager. And it became a national bestseller. So that was exciting.
Now, you've done so many things for so long, but do people still recognize you as Pixanne today?
More than recognizing me, they recognize my voice when it's not croaky like it is right
Sure.
now.
Yeah, I understand that.
I'll be in the supermarket talking to the cashier, checking out, and from behind me, someone will tap me on the shoulder and say, are you Pixanne? I said, yes. I recognize your voice.
That must be great.
It's fun. It's really gratifying.
What are your fondest memories about being in show business?
Well, there's so many, Bill. Oh, my golly. After doing the things that we just talked about, I decided I really wanted, and this, I'm leading up to it, I guess, in a roundabout way. I decided I really wanted to do singing professionally. I was singing on the show all the time, and I was writing songs all the time. But I wanted to sing with a large orchestra, with a full orchestra. And I was fortunate enough to be able to hook up with a wonderful arranger, pianist, and conductor whose name is Richard Rome, who worked with some of the greats of all time. And he and I produced 4 adult albums of a Great American Songbook, plus things that I had written, plus 2 Christmas albums. And Bill, there is nothing so exciting as being in a recording studio and hearing the music and being able to sing to it. And I often said, if I was going to check out, I want to be sitting on a stool, hitting a high C, keel over, and everybody was going to wonder what happened to Jane. That would be terrific.
Do you have any regrets about your career?
None.
0.
0 regrets. I know that sounds ridiculous, but how many people can say that they have done in life everything that they wanted to do? And I think that's because occasionally I lecture to college-age kids how to get into the job market and blah, 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 blah. And I tell them, be the best you can be. I don't care what it is, but just be the very best. If you want to get into television, sweep the studio floor. You'll be recognized if that floor is cleaner than anybody else has ever been able to get it. And then just remember that no matter what job you start with, the next one builds upon it, builds and builds. And you're always able to continue creating new things. The other thing I tell kids, not kids, young people, is that don't just go in for a job where you read an ad in the newspaper because there's so much competition.
Sure.
Create your own job. Find out where the need is, create the job. I've never answered an ad. I've always just come up with something new and different. And I think a lot of people can do that, but they don't realize they can.
How would you like your fans to remember you? As a teacher, as Pixanne, as a performer?
That's a very good question. Let me think about that. Well, I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who truly cared about people, who wanted them to be happy, and particularly young people. And I hope that they knew that I loved them, that I wanted the best to happen to them. And above all, I would be so happy if I could be remembered as someone who brought a little bit of magic and wonderment into their lives.
You're a very lucky woman because I think you've done all those things.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
Tell me about your family.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're a tiny, tiny little family because I was an only child. No brothers or sisters at all. And as I mentioned, my mom was just tremendously instrumental in my life, very encouraging, and she never missed a show, by the way.
Did she have musical talent?
She did.
Uh-huh.
My mom was a wonderful pianist, and she could sing, and very shy, and very kind of bashful about that. But she was terrific, really very, very talented. And then I have 2 sons, one an engineer and one a musician. I have 3 granddaughters who are the loves of my life. And it's fun.
Is anyone else involved in show business in your family? How about your granddaughters? Are they showing any propensity to play the piano or something?
They each have a different interest.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, none of them are really musical, but they each one of the 3 are very, very different, as I'm sure you know because you've got grandchildren.
4. Yeah, they're very different. You're absolutely correct.
Bill, do you have any regrets?
No.
It's
No,
so
I'm like
nice
you.
to hear.
I never did look back, but this story isn't about me, it's about you. Living in Philadelphia, never left. Why didn't you ever leave? I mean, everybody wants to go to New York and it kind of attracts people, but not you.
No. Well, I worked in New York, and that was terrific. And what we did when I did the show was that I would go over in the morning on a Monday. We would tape all the shows. Then we would come back again on a Thursday, I guess it was. So I got the feeling of New York. I did cabaret all over the country. I was singing like crazy in clubs and smaller venues, my favorite being 54 Below in New York, where again, one of my 5-year-old kids came to one of my performances there. I had no idea who it was. This very attractive young man brought me 24 roses.
Wow.
After the show, and I always go out into the audience. And he said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" Well, how would I? I saw him when he was 5 years old. And he told me who he was. That is the exciting part of what I did. The fact that you can have an impact on young people. And that to me is the most important thing of all, I think.
What don't people know about the famous Jane Norman
Oh dear.
that you want to talk about?
I think now they just about know everything. I guess, let me think about that. I think they probably don't know that I'm certainly not a real good cook. I love to eat. I'm a foodie.
You don't look like it, but
Well,
I believe you.
I am a foodie, but cooking is not my thing. I've gotten better as I've gone along. And my husband, God bless him, he thought when he was alive that I was the greatest cook ever.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How did you
Didn't
fake
matter.
him out like that?
He just thought it was wonderful, I think, that I was doing it. I would come home from work and throw together something, and he thought that was perfectly okay. And I think people don't know what I'm doing now.
What are you doing now? I don't know what you're doing now.
Aha. Well, I met a gentleman who's a producer, quite prominent producer, and I had written 13 new songs, adult songs,
Wow.
and he wanted to hear them. So I gave him the songs. He called me up, and he said to me, "My God, these are terrific." He said, but I write in the Great American Songbook kind of way. He said, "If you trust me, let's work together, and we're going to turn these songs into pop, country, gospel."
Wow.
So I am now all of a sudden, at my advanced age, embarking on a new career of songwriting for the stars, for various recording artists.
That's fantastic.
And it's quite an adventure.
You're in the September of your years, and you're starting a new career.
A brand new career. And I think, and I certainly don't compare myself to Madonna, but like Madonna, you've got to reinvent yourself all along the way. You can't stay in your little green pixie outfit for the rest of your life.
So when will these albums come out?
Well, I have no idea. We're kind of like at the beginning now of getting it, launching these songs out into the world. Some of them are Christmas songs. So maybe next Christmas they'll be out. And we have some country artists interested in some of the songs. So I'll be as surprised as you.
Who is your favorite entertainer?
Oh, I think Hugh Jackman.
He's terrific.
Oh, he
What a
can do
talented guy.
everything. And I've always been a Streisand lover.
Uh-huh.
I mean, who can sing like
Not
Barbara?
bad.
Who can sing like that?
Well, let me tell you something. This has been a half hour that just flew by. And I'm sure that other people are like me, that are glad to find out all these little details about Jane Norman and about Pixanne and about your world. And I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to spend this time with you.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. And you and I go back a long way.
We certainly do. 1964, as far as I'm concerned. That's a long time, but it was my pleasure.
Oh, mine too.
And I want to say this, it's been a great pleasure for me to do this interview with the beautiful and talented Pixanne Jane Norman. I hope you have a great day. I know I did. Thank you very much.